Hello and welcome to the Doing the Rounds podcast with me, Josh Faulkner. My guest this week is Mal Sanders, who, if you know me, will know that he is my favourite British professional wrestler of all time. I often refer to myself as a Mal Sanders tribute act, with everything from the tassel shorts I wear to the ring, right through to his mannerisms. I've been fortunate enough to share a changing room with Mal on a few occasions, and was due to wrestle him in Eastbourne in August 2017, which sadly never happened. It was an honour to talk to Mal in his first podcast interview, and I'm excited to share stories of his career with you all as we talk all things from winning the European Championship at the age of 20 from Mick McManus to how wrestling has changed from when he started. So, without further ado, sit back and enjoy as Mal Sanders does the rounds with Josh Faulkner.
Round one. Let me just tell you before we start though.
Yeah.
I'm old school, don't forget. So some of the answers you get to questions might not be the ones you expect. Because I think the old school are quite different than the new school of wrestling.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe that's what you want, I don't know.
Yes, definitely. How are you doing at the moment?
What, during the lockdown you mean, or just...
In general, it's been a while since I last saw you.
Yeah, when did you last see me?
I believe it was at the fundraising show that Frank Reimer had. This was going back nearly 2 years ago.
The one in Kent there?
In Swanley, yeah.
In Swanley, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, fine, I still keep fit. I still do my run once a week. Before my run, I still do my weight training and I do my stretches. I'm one of those that I've always sort of been into fitness, you know, so I know like a lot of the boys, they finish and they don't really bother, you know.
Yeah.
But now I'm always, like yourself, you'll probably be in it. I mean, I can see by the way you train and stuff that you'll probably be in it for the long haul.
That's the thing. I mean, I've always been fascinated by the shape of the wrestlers and being in, sort of looking larger than life. And I mean, my mentality of it was that you don't want to look like the average Joe on the street. I mean, I know every wrestler has to look differently. They all can't look the same, but...
Years ago, it wasn't so much like that. I mean, you know, people like Les Kelly, although they were tough men, they weren't particularly in good shape. But, you know, Les Kelly would fight King Kong. You know,
absolutely. And I'm sure he'd probably win.
Nowadays, the emphasis is more on sort of physical, the look of them physically. You know, they all look. Most of them now look great, don't they? You know, there's not many that are not in shape these days.
Yeah, and even then, if they're not big guys, they're ripped, or there's something about them. They've got a physical presence in some way.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, if you see boxers, I mean, you know, 90% of boxers are in great shape. You know, there's the odd one, but if you're in a fighting sport, you know, you need to be, I think, in good order. And the persona is now with professional wrestling over the years. As I say, when I first came in, it wasn't so much labelled. There was a few fellas in good shape, but it wasn't so much labelled as though you got to be in great physical shape. You know, your ability was more important. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the way it was. But you know, times change and things evolve, and you know, that's the way it is these days. Most of the American wrestlers you see are all in fantastic shape, aren't they? So
they are.
If that's what they require, then that's what you have to do.
And again, it seems even with the American style of wrestling, it's swinging back round to the case of not everyone's expected to look like a bodybuilder now, rather than how it may have been over there 20 years ago. So now they're focusing more on the conditioning side of things.
Yes, well, from what I hear, I'm in touch with the training school. People ring me from there, and they're trying to get it back to the old, you know, British way of wrestling.
Right.
You know. Wrestling will always be around, but it has different personas. You know, it had a pantomime feel for a time, didn't it? And you know, seeing the world of sport they tried to bring back on TV, you know, a couple of years ago, you're never gonna match the world of sport that was on for 30 years, from 50 to 88. You're never gonna reach that. You know, you can try different ways of doing it, but you're never going to match the actual world of sport that we put on. You know, that was a sort of one-off, if you like. And the character, everybody was a character.
Absolutely, yeah.
The people are different now. They haven't. Everybody was a character. Even the people that put the rings up and drove the rings and were seconds. Everybody was a character.
Yes.
In those days. Whether it's the these new laws that have been brought in that you can't say this and you can't say that, and this, that, and the other, and people are not as blasé as they were in those days. But I'm glad that I grew up in that era, rather than the era now, really.
Do you think, Mal, that where you said that era was a one-off, do you think it was its time and its place, and it fit for what it was and everything that was with it in that time, in the sense of back then there were only... Was it 3 TV channels, whereas now there's hundreds?
Yeah, that could be a point, but I don't know. There was just something about those days that was different, and some days we could have like 5 or 6 shows at Del Martin, and they'd have like 40 wrestlers.
Yes.
Some days, and that in the summer that could last for a week. You'd have 6-7 shows a day with fights and stuff. And
wow.
it was just the way the people were, as I say, you have all these new rules now, all this, you can't say this and you can't say that, and you can't do this and you can't do that. We used to do anything we wanted and say anything we wanted, and I know it's not as easy now, but I'm going to say that because I came from that era, but the characters then were just fantastic.
Who are some of the characters, Mal, that you remember fondly?
Well, when I first came in, Steve Logan, Mick McManus's partner.
Yes.
Cat Weasel, Johnny Quango, Sid Cooper, Billy Tarantus. Everybody was a character, and everybody had their place, and it was just a great time to be around. Every day was like a party. When you went on a wrestling trip, it was like a load of school kids going to a party. It was that funny. Honestly, it was that funny. And the things we used to get up to was unbelievable. When if you tell people now, they wouldn't believe you. But
or they think you need locking up, I'd imagine.
Well, exactly. And you wouldn't get locked up these days. But that's the way it was, Josh. And I know you say you probably heard it 100 times, but that was the way it was. You could, the stuff you could get away with because you were a wrestler as well.
Yeah.
Was unbelievable. And I'm glad I lived in those times and not these times of
you can't say this, you can't say that. Everything's wrong.
You're very restricted now from what you can do. I was doing 6-7 jobs a week for years.
Right.
I used to get my date sheet and I used to look for a day off. What you did in those days, you got a sheet for the next month telling you what days you were working and who you were working for, Dal Martin or Best Ryton or Beresford or whatever, and I would look for a day off, but whenever you did, and I'd say to my mates, I've got a day off next month on Tuesday or whatever. But as soon as that time come round, you bet your life somebody would be injured and you'd have to fill in for them. And you couldn't say no, of course, because it was your livelihood, but that's how busy it was. I mean, the most I've ever wrestled is 3 times a day.
Do you remember where they were?
I wrestled at an afternoon show at Selsey.
Yep.
And then I came and was on first at Bognor, and then I was on last at Crawley.
The West Sussex Loop.
That's it. So they weren't that far away. I mean, some boys did doubles. Rocco and Finley, I can remember them doing a show in London, and they're having to travel to like Leicester or something to go on last. They did an early start in London, and then straight up the M1 to go on last at a later starting show up north. But yeah, that's the way it was in those days, Josh. I know people now look for work. In those days, you had work coming out of your ear holes.
I remember this week now. This is a few years ago, and although they're both not wrestling jobs, one of them was, and the other was a comedy gig that I was booked in to do. So I wrestled at Church Farm Holiday Park in Bognor Regis on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00.
Yeah.
I was on stage in Edinburgh in Scotland at 10:00.
No.
Yeah. All by public transport.
That's one end to the other.
Pretty much.
That's one end to the other. Well, that's great. That's great.
It was touch and go.
How's your comedy thing going?
It's going okay. I mean, I think at the moment I'm writing away, and I think I found my style. It took me quite a while to think, what's me, what do I enjoy doing, what do I get the best reaction from, and I think it's come from those very dark one-liners.
Good.
Those very near the cuff one-liners.
Yeah, good. You got to go a bit near the knuckle.
No one. Yeah, that's the thing. Everyone I've ever liked has done that.
No, you can't just tell jokes about your mum and dad all the time. You've got to go a bit near the knuckle. And, Bernard Manning made it big, Chubby Brown made it big like that. You haven't got to be filthy, but, just go a little bit near. Well, good luck. You still got jobs, have you, doing that?
Well, it's not. It's more so much. It's more open mic spots. So I'd go to an open mic night and try new material out there, and some of the bigger clubs will have tryout nights where they'll give newer acts a chance to go on and perform.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? That's good.
It is. And again, I think it all ties into this. But
what would you rather do? Would you rather make it in wrestling or make it in comedy?
Wrestling was the first love, Mal. I was doing that long before I started doing comedy. To go back to the question, Mel, I think it'd be possibly looking to make a name for it in the comedy world. But equally, I wouldn't close the door on wrestling. It's been good to me, and I met some good people through it.
Yeah, we'll just keep going and see if you can go down both avenues.
Absolutely, that's the thing. If one could fuel the other, then great.
Yeah, great. You could actually bring your comedy into the wrestling. See, a lot of people can be great wrestlers but can't speak.
Yes.
See, that's half the job now.
Yep.
As well as being able to wrestle and have ability, you've got to be able to, as you say, look into the camera and speak for a minute or whatever. And not everybody can do that.
No.
In the wrestling job, I won't name names, but a lot of fantastic wrestlers, when they were given the microphone, they had no idea and weren't comfortable. In those days, it didn't matter. In our day, it wasn't so much. But nowadays, you've got to be able to do that, So it's not only got to look good and have wrestling ability, you've got to be able to speak now as well. So it's getting more and more difficult as it all goes on, isn't it?
If I could take it back to your beginnings, Mal, what's the first memory you have of seeing wrestling?
The first I was quite a good footballer, and I went to Crystal Palace when I was 14 for a trial. And they said to me, "You're good enough, but you're not big enough. Come back when you've sort of bulked up a bit."
Right.
So I started sort of bodybuilding training.
Right.
Got to know Lee Bronson and Clive Myers, and through that started amateur wrestling. I started amateur wrestling when I was 14.
Right.
And that sort of led me into the professional job. A lot of pros from my club, ex-amateurs from my club turned pro, like the Ball Twins, Dave Bond, John Hall, Lee Bronson, Ian Muir. They were all United boys, and that sort of, led me from the amateurs into the professional job. When I came in the business, I was very lucky. I worked in Brixton, where Dal Martins was,
right.
The wrestling headquarters. And I used to go every lunchtime to go to the gym to get scurf round and to have a pull round with, professionals that have been in the game 10 years. And it was a tough game to get into in those days. That's why I don't take too lightly to all these new fellas that come in and within a week they're all got world championship belts hanging around. Everybody's got a belt now. When I come into business, if you had a championship match, you used to get double pay for it. It was that important.
Yes.
And as you know, I did the run with Mick with a belt, for a few years.
Absolutely.
And, they meant something in those days. When you look at everybody now, like kids of 16, they've got belts hanging around their necks, and they don't mean anything because everybody's got one. And that's what I mean. The old prospect of the game has changed. And there's no one there to say, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or you should be doing that. In our days, it was governed by the wrestling board, and there was like 5 promoters that were joint promotions, and you didn't do anything untoward, otherwise you'd have got a sack or you'd have been reprimanded, You just didn't do it. Now it seems anybody can do anything and anybody can be a champion. No disrespect to anybody, because they well might be champions, but it seems everybody has got a championship belt, as you probably have realised.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems, Buddy Mel, there's more championships than there are wrestlers.
Exactly. And it was a lot tougher in those days, Josh, to get into the business. You know, it got to the stage in the 80s where you could just buy a pair of white boots and white trunks and you were a wrestler, which wasn't good because they got no basic understanding of wrestling. Now, I think all professional wrestlers should go and do a bit of amateur wrestling for a couple of years to get the basics of wrestling. I mean, I know they're great acrobats and they flip about and do this, that and the other, but a lot of the matches now remind me of like acrobatic shows like Cirque du Soleil, or I refer to it as come dancing. Everything is choreographed. There's no ad-libbing these days. Whenever me and Stevie Gray do seminars, we always try to ram it into people's heads that you need to be able to ad-lib. You can't remember a 30-minute match move for move. It's impossible unless you're a genius.
Well, also, as well, there's remembering the match, Mel, and also if you're out there and what you're doing is dying on its arse, you need to be able to say, right, we need to change this, and we need to do something to win them back round.
There was great fellas like Joe Cornelius in the old days, Jim Hussey. They could start as a villain. Halfway through the match, they would be a blue eye, and the crowd would be cheering them. And at the end of the match again, they would be a villain.
Wow.
That's how fantastic. And these are the people that I used to look up to and used to take note of what they did. You know, there's nobody around these days. And this is no disrespect to anybody else, but there's people training wrestlers now that need training themselves. You know, some people are training wrestlers, I see, and I think, God almighty, who's going to train them first before they can train other wrestlers, you know? And so I was lucky. I had great teachers like Zolly Boschik and Steve Gray and John Cortez and Sid Cooper. You know, I was very, very lucky. But people haven't got that opportunity now, and I think it shows, not that I was the greatest, because I wasn't, but I think it shows the old school were better taught than the new kids coming in. You know.
You touched on that where you said you'd go to Dale Martin's in Brixton and you'd be on the mat with the pros being scurfed. Do you remember some of who they were?
Yeah, well, I used to go with people like Peter Zakash. Don't be fooled by the limp Peter Zakash had. Peter Zakash wrestled for Hungary. He was a fantastic amateur wrestler. Zolly Boschik was a fantastic. Lenny Hurst, Dave Bondley, Bronson, Pete Roberts. They put me on with Pete Roberts when he came back from Japan.
Right.
Paul ran with Pete. That's the way it was, Josh. Me and Pete are the greatest of friends now. But that's the way it was. You know, it wasn't, you know, I've seen people who were training with me there go out the gym crying. And I mean crying, because, you know, they got hurt and they didn't want to do it. That doesn't happen now. I'm not saying you've got to, you know, go and have your head kicked in. I'm not saying that, but just teaching them the basics of wrestling. And, you know, that's not done now. People don't get the basics of wrestling. It's all somersaults and this and that and the other, you know. And, you know, I'm old school, as I said, so, you know, I tend to veer where that's the best policy, really.
I'm not sure who I heard this from, Mal. It's someone I've spoken to over the years, but it's and I think I couldn't agree more with this. It's a case of people want to be climbing up to the top rope before they've learned how to lock up.
Well, exactly, and you know, you can't run before you can walk.
Yeah.
You know, when we go to do these seminars, all people are interested is being like the Americans. And all right, the Americans are good, and you know, the Americans make money, and the Americans are very popular, but you've got to know the basics of wrestling before you actually start wanting to do treble somersaults. And I mean, as you know, I wasn't never a great one for taking bumps and stuff. You know, I thought I could. And as I said to someone the other day, you know, they said, "Well, how did you get so much reaction?" And I said, me and Stevie Gray one night didn't touch for 2 rounds.
Wow.
And the place was in uproar. So that, not putting myself over or Steve over, but we had so much heat on us, we could do that. That's the way it was. We didn't touch for 2 rounds, and the place was in uproar. They were screaming and shouting. There's an old saying in the job, Josh.
Yep.
It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Oh, I completely agree.
You know, and everybody now wants to cram a 30-minute match into 5 minutes. And it doesn't work like that. Nobody sells a move these days, you know. Nobody works on an arm or works on a leg or whatever. We used to tell stories, you know, in the match.
That's the thing. They're trying to cram everything into that 5 minutes because they know there's another 25 matches on after.
Exactly. And people don't do that anymore. If you told a story, it would get much more reaction. You know yourself. If I take your arm and you whip me out, and I take a bump, which is very unusual, they're not going to get anything. But if you work on that arm for a couple of minutes and you try 3 or 4 ways of escaping and can't, and then eventually escape, it means something, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you get reaction. I think wrestling crowds have changed as well, Josh, over the years. I mean, I don't watch a lot of it, I'll be honest with you. I don't watch a lot of wrestling now. If people put ups on TV, on Facebook or whatever, I have a glance for it. But I don't really watch wrestling these days. I think the punters are different now than they were in the old days. That's
the thing, they're punters that are expecting more because they've been so used for so long now to, as we said, cramming everything into those 5 minutes. It's sort of, they're always hiring their expectations every time they go to a show or they watch a bit of wrestling or...
Yeah, yes, true. But I did a show a couple of years ago in Wolverhampton.
Right.
Me, James Mason and Danny Collins were in a triple tag. It was one of my last matches.
Right.
And against these fellas, a fella came in from America.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll know him or if you remember the show. It was in Wolverhampton. They had a 3-night thing in Wolverhampton.
That's right. It was Chikara from Mike Quackenbush's Chikara.
Was that
a trios tournament of sorts. Yeah.
And we had a standing ovation for like 5 minutes at the end of the match. And it was only like a normal match we would have done. And we had a 5-minute standing ovation. And I thought myself then, you know, punters have changed. You know, wrestling punters have changed over the years, you know. And, I mean, they do it on... The internet has come along now as well, you see. So there's so many different aspects of, you know, watching wrestling and what you want and what you don't want. The shows at York Hall are very popular, aren't they?
They are indeed, and they're obviously using the best names from the scene here, and they're bringing in people from America, people from Japan. So
exactly, and they draw big houses, don't they?
They do indeed.
But don't forget when we used to do Croydon, Bellevue, Manchester, Leicester, wherever. The Albert Hall we did once a month, and it was always sold out, 6,000 people. That was every month.
Yeah.
You know, that's good. You know, I always remember Max Crabtree saying to me, if Frank Sinatra was at the Albert Hall every month, after a few months, the houses would dwindle. And that's true. We used to pack Croydon every week, sell it out every week. Shirley Bassey was there every week. It would soon dwindle out after a few months, wouldn't it? But the wrestling was there for 30 years and sold it out all the time. That's how popular it was in those days, you know. It was like an institution. Mick McManus was like a film star. It was, you know, it wasn't Mick McManus meeting the Beatles. It was the Beatles meeting Mick McManus.
Did that actually happen at one point, or?
You laugh, but it was that. You know,
wow.
He met the Rolling Stones. It was the Rolling Stones meeting Mick McManus. He was the big star. You know?
There's a story in the book, The Wrestling, Mal, which you're featured quite heavily in. And it's not just the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. It was some of the bigger villains of the day that were into the wrestling, the Cray twins.
Yeah. Wrestling had a persona where it drew everybody. It drew the rich, it drew the famous, it drew the dregs of life, it drew the underworld. Everybody wanted to be around the wrestling. And I just sort of came in on the end of that. I turned pro in 77, but like late 60s, early 70s, you know, there were a lot of villains associated with the wrestling business. And it just had that persona about it. Everybody wanted to be around the wrestling. You know, and it came to the stage where it was on television twice a week. It it was on a Saturday, and they put it on a Wednesday night after the news. It was that popular. And I know everything has its time, but it was in its day, Josh, very, very, very popular, and everybody wanted to be around the wrestlers. Everybody wanted to be around them.
You mentioned, Mal, that you turned professional in 1977. From doing my research, I've read that you had your first professional match on Fireworks Day of 77 with a man that you'd gone to have many great matches with, but also a long friendship with, and that's Steve Gray. Is that true? Was that your first professional match?
No, it wasn't my first match. My first match was with a fella called Steve Kelly.
That's where they've got confused.
You know Tony Scarlo, do you?
Yes.
Tony Scarlo's big friend was Peter Kelly. And
right.
Their sons, Dino Scarlo and Steve Kelly, came into the business when I came into business, at the same time. And my first match was at Catford. My first TV match was with Steve Gray at Aylesbury, and that was the one that was on Fireworks Night, I believe. And we were due to be on last, and Big Daddy against John Elijah, if I remember right, was due to be, and they switched it and put us on first. And I was so nervous when I walked into the ring. A woman asked my autograph, and I signed my real name. Instead of putting Mal Sanders, I write Mal Harvey.
Right.
But Steve looked after me then, and looked after me till my last wrestling date, which he refereed 2 years ago in Gravesend, and we're great friends. And I'd like to say we've had some good matches. We were the only two ever in this country. I know people have tried to do it since, but we were the only two in those days that ever did blindfold matches.
Oh, really?
And no one ever did them. Yeah, and all the big names were out watching those matches. We were the first ones to do it. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you done that blindfold match?
I can't remember the first time, but we did them. We didn't do them all the time. We did them now and again as like special one-offs. But different. Obviously, we worked for different promoters then. We worked, and we always did them for different promotions. But everybody talks about the blindfold matches. They used to love the blindfold matches. They didn't know how we did them. You see.
Who was your first match for, Mal? What promoter was it that gave you that first match?
Dal Martin I came in the business for, and I say it was stationed in Brixton Road, and that was the main promotion then, they had TV, and, I was only there 3 weeks. I'm on TV with Stevie Gray, and then I'm at the Albert Hall one with Mick, and then the year after they give me the belt. So it all sort of happened, within a short space of time.
Do you remember meeting Max Crabtree for the first time?
Yeah, I do, because when Mike Marino left, because Mike Marino died with me in my car coming home from Folkestone. Did you know that? Mike was the promoter for Dal Martin's after McManus.
Right.
Mike left and Max Crabtree came in, and so all the young ones wanted to sort of impress Max because he was the big promoter. And I was at Chatham when he came to see me, and I was on with Zolly Boschik.
Right.
And so I knew you didn't have to, Zolly was fantastic and put me over. And Zolly was, for me, one of the greatest lightweight villains there's ever been. He was just fantastic, just fantastic. You could go in there. I used to go in with Zolly and not even know what I'd done anything, and come out and the crowd would be going bananas, and I'd think, well, what have I done? I hadn't done anything. He'd done it all for himself and for me as well. He was that good.
For a period of time, Mal, you were one of many of Big Daddy's tag team partners.
Yeah.
What was it like tagging with Daddy?
Okay, I was very pleased to see that Mark Rocco's sons have put on Facebook that their favourite tag match with their dad was me and Daddy against Rocco and Haystacks. That's on YouTube. And I can remember that day specifically because that's the day John Lennon got shot.
Okay.
Do you remember John Lennon from the Beatles?
I do indeed, yeah.
As we were travelling to that show, certain things stick out in your mind. That was the day John Lennon got shot. And a great match. I think it culminated in Stack splashing me and me having to be carried out. But, you can just tell by the atmosphere. You watch the rerun of it on YouTube, and the atmosphere in the hall and the people packed. De Montfort Hall, like 3,000 people.
Wow.
Wrestling was big in those days. Big news, and it was just great to be a part of it. Really, be involved in it.
Oh.
Obviously, we had to do all the work for Daddy. He only got in for 5 minutes, and we did 20 minutes. But that was it. That was part of the deal. So
I spoke to Johnny Kidd the other day, Mal, and one thing he pointed out in his interview was that despite wrestling and having the long career that he always had a day job. Was you also working a day job, or was wrestling your full-time job?
I had a day job up until 1990. And I got made redundant from the Greater London Council. I used to work for the Greater London Council, and I got made redundant then. And after that, really, I just wrestled. I then used to work part-time looking after the old people, driving the old people, because I was bored. So I had a job just driving old people to their nursing home and back home, a couple of hours a day, nothing spectacular. So I haven't really worked in a proper job since 1990, really. So I've been very lucky. The wrestling game has been very good to me, So I know Johnny Kidd worked up till recently.
He's still going now. You'd still see him in the ring occasionally.
Oh no, well, he's retired more times than Frank Sinatra. He was still working in his day job up to a couple of years ago. I think he worked at Vauxhall in Luton.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and lots of people had jobs. There was a few that didn't. Obviously, the big names when I was like Mick and Palo and all those. Des Kelly, well, he had a farm, but but a lot of these sort of non-top of the bill boys did have jobs. They had to sort of subsidise their living, because they didn't get paid as much, obviously.
You touched on it a little bit earlier on, Mal, working with Mick McManus with the belt, and you were the first person to beat Mick on TV, ending the 7-year reign, and you were only 20 when you'd done it.
That's right. Yeah.
How did that change your career at the time?
Well, it opens a lot of doors, doesn't it? And surreal, really, because I'm only a young lad. Mick's coming to the end of his career, and I suppose they saw something in me that, they thought, oh well, maybe he can carry it on, and it was like an earthquake happening, really, because Mick had never been beaten before, and the reaction we got from that was absolutely fantastic. Newspapers and stuff, and because it meant something. That's what I'm saying. In those days, Mick was such a big name that to see him beaten was unreal, and people couldn't believe it. Consequently, from there, we did the rounds. We did all the big halls and stuff, and I used to travel with Mick, and not a lot of people did travel with Mick. He was quite a sort of loner in that stuff, but I travelled a lot with him and got to know him. And Mick had come through the amateur ranks. He was at the amateur club in Camberwell, so Mick knew what he was doing. I saw a fella get in the ring to try and attack him one night at Battersea. And I was just about to go in and help him, and Mick wasn't a particularly big man, but this man was 15, 16 stone. And Mick took him on the floor and he controlled him while the security staff came in. Now, you wouldn't have thought that of Mick McManus.
No.
It just shows that he had a good background and knew what he was doing, And because it was tough to get into business, as I say. That was 30 years before me, so it was even tougher then, But no, it opened a lot of doors for me when, And of course, you can always say you're the only person to beat Mick McManus, because everybody remembers Mick McManus.
He's one of the names that you talk to about that era, and he'll be one of the names that people will say, oh, Giant Haystacks, Big Daddy, Mick McManus.
That's it. If you talk about wrestling, you talk about Mick McManus. And, before Big Daddy and Haystacks, really, it was McManus and Jackie Palo. They were the two big names. And, if you talk to anybody about wrestling, Mick McManus, that's the name they remember.
So you talk about doing the rounds with Mick, and there's a match referenced in the book The Wrestling that took place at the Royal Albert Hall, which saw you lose 1.5 pints of blood.
That's right.
How did that happen? I
fell out and hit the table outside. I hit the timekeeper's table on the corner, and I lost 1.5 pints of blood. A fellow on the front row had a heart attack.
Wow.
It caught an artery in my head and was squirting all over it. Stevie Gray nearly passed out when I came back to the dressing room. And I was losing so much blood. They took me to St Thomas's and I had to have my head stitched without having an injection. So I had to have 8 stitches in my head without having an injection, which is not great. But yeah, that was how it was in those days.
And was you back working the next night?
No. I took a few nights off. I had to have a week or so off and just let it, sort of heal a bit. But nothing in those days. You healed quick. I mean, you obviously know yourself when you used to sprain your ankle. 2 days later it's fine. Nowadays, if you sprain your ankle a month later, you're still limping.
Yeah.
In those days when you're young and your metabolism's great, and then you heal very quickly. I had very few. I had a few. I mean, I had 22 stitches in my face during my career.
Wow.
I had probably the same amount in my body as well. But you never used to let it bother you in those days. You'd get on with it, and you do it. So, yeah, that's just the way it was. I mean, it's not all... People used to say to me, oh, it's all fixed. I said, well, if it was all fixed, you wouldn't get these injuries with stitches and bangs and bruises and breaks and stuff, But everybody always had this conclusion that wrestling was fake. But as you know, some of it is not fake. You can get hurt, can't you?
Absolutely. Another famous hall you wrestled at, Mal, was the Wembley Arena. In 1981, you defended the European title there. And speaking of halls, which ones did you enjoy working most?
Well, obviously Croydon, because Croydon was, my local hall. I lived in Malden then, so Croydon was the nearest.
Yes.
And always sold out, and always a great atmosphere. In fact, Stevie Gray said to me the other day, it's a funny story. Stevie Gray said to me the other day, he said, do you remember when we was tagging with Daddy? It was a 3-a-side tag. It was Haystacks, Rocco and someone else against Daddy, myself and Steve Gray. He said, do you remember us walking down from the back? And the heat was so much, it took us 10 minutes to get to the ring.
You know what, Mal? It's funny you say that, because I was travelling with Steve to a job. Just before the lockdown happened. And he was telling me this, that you both went up the sides.
Yeah.
And
I can't remember it, Josh. I can't remember it, which is great. Because that means I have so many great memories of the wrestling job that there's another 100,000 that I've forgotten. But that's what it was like then. Every night was fantastic. It wasn't mundane. Every night was fantastic. The crowds were fantastic. The wrestlers were fantastic. It was always a great match. You very rarely had a bad match because everybody was a great pro in those days, And Steve said to me, "Can you remember that?" I said, "I can't remember that at all." So that's how great it was, in those days. Most people, that would have been the highlight of their career.
Yes.
But I'm sorry to say I can't remember it.
Was it Mike Marino that came up with the name Superstar Mal Sanders?
No, I think it was Max Crabtree after Mike had gone. I think it was when they put me over against Mick. I think it was after that. But I'll tell you how I got the name. As I say, we were based in Brixton.
Yes.
And Mike Marino said, well, we've got to get you a name, Mal what? And I was going along Brixton, and he said it's either Mal Kentucky Fried Chicken or Mal British Home Stores. We were looking at all the shops. And there was Sanders. And I said, what about Mal Marks and Spencer? He said, it won't work. There was a jewellers called Sanders, the Jewellers. And I said, that sounds all right, Mal Sanders. And that's how the name came to be.
I was thinking about Mal Marks and Spencer's now.
Yeah, Mal Marks and Spencer's, eh? What about that? That's where you can take your belt back if you don't like it.
Another nickname you had, Mal, and this may have been a little bit later on, was the Mouth of the South.
Yeah, I can't think why, can you?
I can't think why either.
I can't think why. I don't know who gave me that, just because I suppose I was very outspoken when I was in the ring. That's the time when I had the manageress, Luscious Loretta. You remember Lois came and... do you remember when I had the manageress?
I think I've seen a few clips, or I've seen some pictures. I I don't think I've. Yeah.
Yeah, she was fantastic, and she was with me for a few years, and that's when I think I got the name tag Mouth of the South. Me and Stevie Gray were doing the big run in, then we had the big rivalry going.
Yeah.
And that's how the blindfold matches actually came to be. I think through the rivalry, something happened where I think he threw salt. I threw salt in his eyes, or something or other, or I squirted something in his eyes, maybe the water, and he said he couldn't see, and that's how we formed the blindfold. I said, all right, then, well, I'll have a hood on next time, and I won't be able to see, so we'll both be blind. That's how the blindfold match came into being. But we had that blindfold match was great, and they all used to, Finlay, Murphy, Regal, they all used to come out and watch that. Don't worry.
I'm lucky enough to say, Mal, that I've seen you do a blindfold match, and that was with James Mason in Gillingham, coming up to 10 years ago now.
Right. Yeah. No disrespect to James, because James hasn't probably done a few. James is a fantastic worker. Me and Steve had that sort of chemistry.
Yes.
We knew what we were going to do. I mean, James is, one of the best this country's produced, but
yes,
it's got to be a certain. It's got to be done a certain way, that blindfold match. I think I've heard that they've tried to do some since, but they haven't been very successful. But we were lucky. We had the right pattern for it, and it sort of got over. And we did a few. It was good.
Would they do the act back then where they would take the blindfold out to the punters and say, right, put this on and tell me what you can see?
No, we'd get them in the ring.
Oh, wow.
We'd get them in the ring and put it on them. And then say to them, can you see? And obviously they'd say no. I think that was the time actually when we brought Lois in, because we needed a third stooge really in the match, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Because they're very difficult. They are quite difficult to do, those blindfold. So we needed an extra body. So Lois was absolutely fantastic. As I would lift my blindfold up and go in the corner, and the referee would give me a bollocking to put it back on.
Yeah.
She would be hitting Steve over the head with her stiletto in the other corner.
Wow. And I can imagine the reaction that would have got.
Fantastic. I mean, at the times we had to get her out of there, which was, and absolutely fantastic times, and we had to fight our way out of many halls over the years.
Talking about fighting your way out of the venue, Mal, and you see it. Some of the women that would go to the wrestling shows.
Oh, they're worse than the men.
Yeah, they get really stuck in.
Oh dear. Well, Lois was a prime target, obviously.
Are there any stories that stick out in your mind of having to really fight your way out of the ring?
Oh yeah. And the worst places were like up that East Coast, Norwich, Bury St Edmunds, up that sort of way, Kings Lynn.
Yeah.
Terrible places to try and get out of. You'd have to fight your way. I mean, I've had to, Lois dive into like half a dozen people to get her out where they've been, giving her a good hiding and stuff, it could. I don't think it's like that anymore, Josh, is it? The crowd don't get so involved, do they?
I think I've not seen it in a few years. I've seen it once at the Fairfield Halls, actually. It was a tag between...
That's terrible times, yeah.
It was a tag with Robbie Brookside and Frankie Sloan against Ricky Knight and Jimmy Ocean, and they had Julia as the manageress.
Yeah, that's what you said, yeah.
I'm not sure if you were at that job. It was the one where Finlay had come over for Brian.
Not sure, mate.
Again, Julia had been getting involved throughout the match, and one of the female punters had gone up to her, and it ended with the female punter on the floor.
Yeah, it would have done. But that's what I mean. When you got a punter, because they're outside the ring, the manageresses.
Yes. And
you've got to keep one eye on them as well as what you're doing, and it's difficult.
Absolutely.
When you're doing that. So, I've had umpteen times where I've had to, jump in, and one of the worst times actually was at Crawley. There's a place called the Hawth.
Do you know, I was meant to do my first job there for John Fremantle, but for whatever reason it never happened.
Well, that was the play, and that's sort of least you wouldn't think of anything happening there. Me and Steve had an absolute riot, which ended up with me dragging a fella into the dressing room.
Right.
To give him a dig because he'd hit Lois. And it was absolutely pandemonium. And I ended up dragging him through the doors into the dressing room to give him a whack because he did lower shit out of the way of all the other punters so they couldn't see. Because they used to love giving you a whack, but if you whacked them back, they didn't like it, you know. So, yeah, it could be very airy, especially, you know, with the man. Well, it was very airy for me anyway. I mean, I had a time at Aylesbury. I don't know if you ever worked at Aylesbury, the old hall.
Not the old hall, no.
The Reg Maxwell. It had like 4 entrances, and you came down a load of steps from the 4 corners of the hall. And this is before mobile phones and anything like that. And the spotlight would be shining on you, so you couldn't really see a lot. And somebody got up and hit me. So, reaction, I backhanded them, like backhand fisted them straight across the face. It was a 14-year-old girl that was a gypsy girl.
Right.
As the match is going on, I can see pandemonium happening outside the ring. He had rung another family or his family of gypsies to come and like ransack the hall. And it ended up with us having to get the police, stopping the tournament, having to get the police there and get me out and back in my car with a police escort to get away from the job.
A police escort out of Aylesbury, Mel?
That's it. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
No mobile phones. I couldn't ring, and I'm too far away from London to get the boys there because, you know, you're 40, 50 mile away.
Absolutely.
They're there, and it's all kicking off. And you don't want to be facing 10, 12 people on your own.
Of course not.
So, yeah, we had the police were called, and that was it. I had to get an escort away from there. But that's sort of, you know, in those days, it was people believed it. You know, it wasn't. People believed it. They believed what I was doing was, you know, was right, was what I was doing, and it just shows that you were doing the job right, I suppose, if you got that sort of reaction, you know.
So a name you touched on earlier on, Mel, was Mike Marino. How did you meet Mike?
I met Mike when I was doing the amateur job. Lee Bronson said to me, come down to the gym at Brixton, and because a lot of those turned pro 2 or 3 years before me, and I fancied the idea of turning pro. And Mike sort of took a liking to me because I'd done the amateur job and, you know, I was very keen to turn pro. He sort of took a liking to me and took me under his wing. And, you know, we got on very well. He was like a dad to me, really. And, you know, he brought me into the business. You know, he sort of made sure that I did the right things and went in the right direction. And he sort of guided me, really, into the job, yeah. He was a great name. You know, Mike Marino was a big star in the wrestling game, you know, years ago. Big star. And, yeah, I was very lucky, really, to have such great teachers, you know.
It's a sort of a tragic story that follows, obviously, being very close to Mike. You were with him as he passed away on the way home from the job.
Well, I mean, I was only probably 22, something like 1981, so I was 23. He phoned me and asked me if I'd take him to Faulkner, which is very unusual because Mike always rode himself everywhere.
Right.
He said he wasn't feeling too well, and I said, yeah, of course I will. So I picked him up and took him to Faulkner, and he should have been on with Big Jim Harris,
who would later go on to be Kamala in the WWF.
That's him. Lovely man. And I said to Mike, and Peter Zakash was in charge of the show, and I said to Mike, look, Mike, you can't wrestle, you're not well enough. And Mike had leukemia, but he didn't know he had leukemia. He'd been for the tests, but the results hadn't come back.
Right.
And so consequently, he didn't wrestle. When he was taken to Ashford Hospital, which is sort of halfway back between Folkestone and London.
Right.
Basil Riley, Romany Riley, was on first, and Basil said, well, look, I'll go back and make sure he's okay. He took Ashford, because Basil lived quite near there. And the job was I was going to pick Mike back on the way back. I was going to pick him up when I'd finished. I was on third, so I'd finished. I went back to pick Mike up, and he was sitting in the waiting room. I didn't know this at the time. He said the people had discharged him, but he'd actually discharged himself.
Right.
Mike being Mike. And we got about 10 miles down the road on the M20, and he was having like a fit in the car. He said he couldn't breathe. I stopped the car, pulled over, tried to get him out of the car and sat him up against the barrier. I could see that, you know, what could I do? I'm trying to stop a car. Nobody would stop. Eventually I stopped the car. It's a man and his wife coming back from a holiday. He stayed with me. She went to call, no mobile phones then.
Yeah.
She went to call an ambulance, but she told them the wrong side of the motorway. So the ambulance went shooting down that side, and it took a long... When the ambulance crew came back, they recognised us. They were wrestling fans.
Right.
Can't believe it. Now, Simon, Mike, man, what's that? I said, Mike's been taken here. Anyway, he was already dead then. We tried to give him the kiss of life. I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth was clenched shut. People saying to me, why didn't you stick a screwdriver in his throat? I said, oh yeah, I've got like an array of screwdrivers in the boot of my car, just ready for sticking them, giving people tracheotomies. But one of the worst bits was, we had so much stuff there, the ambulance, like they got out the paddles, the shock him and stuff. And one of the worst bits was, the fella was packing up and we put him in the back. I said, look, I'll give you a hand to put him in the back. So I lifted up the stretcher with Mike on. And as I lifted it up, his eyes opened.
Right.
He was sort of looking at me, but he wasn't looking at me, you know, he was looking sort of through me. And I thought to myself, how can a man who's given so much entertainment to everybody over the years just die on the side of a road like this? It's not fair.
No.
And, but that was it, he'd gone. And people said to me after, look, Mal, if he you know, had a choice to die and he'd want to die with you and he'd want to die on the wrestling job, you know. I said, yeah, that's all very well and good to say, but he was only 58, Mike. He wasn't old.
Yeah.
You know, he was only a young fella, really, and today's standards. And yeah, it was a great shock to everybody. A great shock to he was a great character, Mike Marino. I mean, they don't make him like Mike Marino. You know, he was just a one-off Mike. You know, they don't make him like him anymore. He had so much respect from people in the wrestling business as well. You know, it was unbelievable. I was only saying to Pete Roberts the other day, next year it's 40 years since Mike died. 1981, 40 years, unbelievable.
Yeah. So you'd go on, Mal, to win the Mike Marino Memorial Shield in Croydon.
Yeah.
Do you feel that was a fitting way to remember him being the person that won that?
Yeah, I suppose because of what happened, they put me over anyway. But I was on with Sid Cooper in the final, and it was a good match, and it was at Croydon, obviously my local hall. So yeah, that was a memorable night for me. I think I've still got that shield here somewhere. I've still got it. I kept it because of, sentimental reasons, because Mike was very dear to me.
Absolutely.
And, it was a sad time. It was a sad time. But, as the show goes on, Josh, and that's the same as in wrestling, the show goes on, and Mike would have wanted it to go on,
Looking at the more positive memories that you have of your time in the job, Mal, what other moments of your career stand out to you most?
I had so many great times and so many funny times, Josh. It's too numerous to mention, really. I'm just grateful that I was born in a time when I had the people in the business that I had. I don't think I'd have fitted in now. I was always mucking around and stuff, as you probably know. And I used to drive people potty with this, that and the other. They were just great times. And I've no particular time, apart from winning the belt, obviously, from Mick. But that was when I first started. I was in the job for 40 years. I did 40 years. And just too many. A typical example, when Stevie Gray said, about the Big Daddy thing, did I remember? I can't remember that, because I've got probably another 1,000 things I've remembered instead, so it's great to know that I had all those great memories. Travelling abroad as well. I mean, we used to travel abroad. I mean, we used to go to Africa and Dubai and things like that. Those things don't happen now.
No.
I went to Dubai with Pat Roach, and we went to Zimbabwe, and, I went to Nigeria, and, you get around the world and get paid for it, which is great. That doesn't sort of happen too much now to too many wrestlers.
No.
In those days, it was common, you did lots of trips abroad, and that was a perk of the job. I did a couple of adverts. I was on the Generation Game. I was in Heartbeat. Me and Steve were in an episode of Heartbeat. You get all those little spin-off things that doesn't happen now. But you got all those little opportunities, years ago. I did a series called God's Gift. You won't remember that. Claudia Winkleman's first thing that she did at Granada Studios.
Was that in Manchester?
Manchester. I did 10 episodes of that, where they have, it was God's Gift. It was a program where they had 50 women in the audience, and you have 4 fellas, and they have to do forfeits. And the winner takes any girl of his choice out. And the second thing they had to do was wrestle or do a feat of strength against me. But that was great. I was there for a week. I did 10 episodes, and it was fantastic. It opens a lot of doors for you. And the boys now don't get that. It's not common now, but it was in those days.
Mel, where did you get the idea to wear the American football jerseys and the helmets of the ring?
I'll tell you where that came from. A mate of mine had an American football shop, American football outfitters.
Okay.
In Earl's Court. And when I worked in Earl's Court, I got friendly with this guy who's into the wrestling, and he opened this shop. But he said, "Here, Mel," he said, "I'll give you he said, "What about if you advertise for me?" He said, "Wear a couple of shirts, I'll have your name put on them, and have the helmet on." Well, as soon as he said the helmet, I thought, oh, good, because I can use that.
Yes.
Do a bit of whacking with, in the villainy job.
Yeah.
So that's where that came in. I don't know how long it lasted for. I can't remember. Maybe a couple of years or so. But I've still got the helmet.
Right.
Still got the New York Patriot helmet he gave me.
Right.
The Riddell helmet. And so my grandchildren will probably get that as time goes. But that was only a short time. But I used to hit Steve with the helmet, and it was like a prop for me. As soon as when he said shirts and stuff, I weren't too keen. But as soon as he said, "I'll give you the helmet," I thought, "Oh, good, that'll be a good prop I can use." So always thinking about what I can use to get me an easy night. And Steve, being the great worker that he was, would sell it to the hilt. So
absolutely.
I was very lucky to work with someone like him over the years, because he was just fantastic. And they don't make him like that anymore, I'm afraid.
They don't.
And we had a thing where our timing, we had a great timing recognition. Our timing was always good, and we always knew what each other was going to. Like they say now, I speak to people, they say, people get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they're working out their match, and then they do the match, and they sit and watch it for 2 hours after, where someone's taped it on a phone.
Yeah.
Well, me and Steve never used to say a word to each other. We used to just go in there at 7:45. We used to go in there, and we knew what we were going to do. We didn't have to speak to each other. One
thing I was talking about last time I travelled with Steve, when we're not talking about wrestling, we're talking about comedy or sort of various forms of entertainment. We were talking about Michael Barrymore.
Yeah.
And how Steve went to see him on a show. He wasn't quite the star then, but he opened it up for Little and Large.
Yeah.
Somewhere down in Cornwall, and he was brilliant. And Steve was saying, I think he might have been on with Clive Myers, and they used to do the all white at the back.
Yeah.
when we got to Worthing, we were doing Worthing for John. I tried to do that, but it didn't go down too well.
No, people won't remember him now.
No.
When it's relevant, people won't remember that.
No.
Michael Barrymore's at his time, it's gone.
Absolutely.
And I always remember working for Max Crabtree once, and I was saying to him, about the old days. He said, "Mal, this is your time. They've had their time. Don't worry about them, So you remember that, Josh. This is your time. You've got to take it by the scruff of the neck and do what you got to do. Because it won't be here. The time won't be here forever, and the opportunity won't be here forever. So you got to do it while you can."
Mel, you were part of Brian Dixon's first bill at the Fairfield Halls in Croydon in 1985. And
was I?
Yeah, well, I've seen the bill. I had the bill sent through to me as I was looking up the questions for this interview.
Right. Who was I on with?
From reading the results, you went to a no contest with Johnny Saint.
Johnny Saint. Okay, another great work. Yeah.
So, what made you move away from joint promotions and start working for All Star Wrestling, which was at that time seen as the opposition?
Money. It offered me considerably more money. So, and Brian Dixon was sort of getting his rat pack together then. Rocco had gone over.
Yes.
I think Johnny Saint had gone over, and I thought, well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And I missed them guys as well, because I had a great camaraderie with those fellas, Rocco and Johnny Saint.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I mean, eventually everybody came over, didn't they? But it was unknown or unheard of, really, for people to go to the opposition in those days. But I thought, I'll blow it, you know. He's offered me a lot more money, so that was what I did. I remember the first job I did for him. I can't remember that Croyd one, but the first job I did for him was at Hemel Hempstead, and it was myself and Johnny Saint in a tag against Rocco and Rocky Moran. Do you remember Rocky Moran?
I've heard the name, yes.
And the place was in uproar. Yeah, so I think Dixon realised that he'd done the right thing to bring all the boys over, because
absolutely,
you know, it was packed and the reaction was fantastic. And yeah, it just went from there, really, Josh. You know, and then it came to the time after that where you could work for anybody.
Yes,
you know, it was very strict when I first came into business. You could only work for Dalmata or Joint Promotions. That was it. You couldn't work for anybody else. And there weren't too many other people around, really. There was only sort of, as we call them, piss pot promotions, you know, in those days. But
we still thrive today.
Yeah, but now, yeah, that's right. But I'm not around it today, so I don't know. But that's what they were in those days. But then, once Brian Dixon came on the scene, you know, but I mean, Brian Dixon was a good promoter, but Max Crabtree was a fantastic wrestling promoter. He'd always get involved in every match.
Yes.
Tell you what he wanted. A lot of boys now say, I would 2-1 in 6 or 2-1 in 10 minutes. Or Max would always get involved, and we were lucky, me and Steve. Max liked us, and so we were lucky. You know, he had a refrain for a lot of the boys. I think some of the boys he used to use them because he had to use them, but he didn't really get on with them. But me and Steve got on well with Max, and he looked after us over the years, you know.
Yeah.
And so Dixon, really, you know, and say Brian's still going, isn't he? 50 years on.
50 years on, and no sign of slowing down.
Do you work for him, Josh, Brian?
I do. I mean, he has his regular crew of guys that he would take round all the halls. So I'd be someone that he'd call up on the day, or saying, listen, could you get to St Albans? Could you get to Croydon? Could you get to Gravesend?
Okay.
And that'd be my place. So, and that's been going on for the last decade now. So.
All right. So have you still got my trunks with the frills on?
I do. I do. They're the best set of gear I ever got made.
Good. You're keeping my.
I'm keeping it going, Mal. And one of the things I've attempted, and they say imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yes.
Pulling off the corner pads. Where did this come from?
Just something that happened. It used to be a lot easier in the old days, because all you had was a band holding the top of the corner post and a band holding the bottom. So you just had to release the band.
Yeah.
Then they started tying them on, so you had to take a sledgehammer in with you.
A pair of bolt cutters or something.
So if I was going on, I used to say to the second, before I went on, just pretend you're tightening the ropes and just loosen the corner pads for me.
Yeah.
Because and a comeback, you see, if you take the pad off, or just drop the pad and do the blue eyes. Do you work villain, Josh, or blue eye?
It depends.
Oh, right, okay.
So I tend to do that.
Take the pad off and just bill their head in a few times to the metal post.
Yeah.
What we used to finish off with was they used to pull the pad off and then smash me around with a pad.
Right.
Really good reaction, you know. They'd throw me in the ropes and smash me in the stomach. I'd take a bump, would you believe? and then hit me on the back of the head, and I'd take another one. You know, we used to do a little serious combination with the corner post, which used to get a lot of heat. Because people didn't do that.
Yes.
You know, people didn't do that. So they're just things that evolve as you work, you know. They're just things that evolve as you work and do stuff, you know, and you'll do a move. That's what I'm saying. Every single move is worked out. When you ad lib and do stuff, if it's good, it's like a joke you tell that people like. You keep it in.
Absolutely.
You know, if you tell a joke and no one laughs at it, then you put it up 2 or 3 times, you probably don't put it in. But if you do something you don't think's going to get a laugh and gets reaction, you keep it in, don't you?
Absolutely.
Same as in the wrestling job. you know, you've got little bits and pieces that you do, and you know, that's just the way it evolves. You know, and that's the way your match evolves. I always believe less is more.
Yes.
You know, people do too much, I think, these days. But then it's, you know, as I said at the beginning, it's all changed around. But you know, I used to try and get most reaction doing the least effort, and I think I was quite successful at that for a few years.
Now, Mel, we touched on it a little bit at the beginning. You were always in really good shape from the beginning right up until your last match. And you sort of touched on your beginnings into weight training, came from wanting to pursue a career in football.
Yeah.
What sort of training were you doing as you started out as a professional?
Well, I was working as well, so I used to have to take my weights to work. But I would always, if I got to the hall early, I would always try and have a little run, you know.
Right.
Which was lovely if it was at the seaside, because you can run along the seafront. But
yes,
I never shirked my training. I always did my training. And, you know, people used to say to me, I can't be bothered now, I can't be bothered, and this, that, and the other. I said, well, you only get out what you put in, Josh, as you know.
Absolutely.
You train yourself. And before anything else is done, even now, even today, you know, I always put training first.
Definitely.
I only do weights a couple of times a week now. I do my weights on a Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
Try and me run, I do that on a Thursday or Friday. I try and cram it into 2 days. But every day I'll do stretching. As you get older, you don't realise now, but as you get older, your muscles tighten, so you need to stretch and do stuff. So I always do a few 10-minute stretches every day. But never shirk your weights and never shirk your run. Running's the best thing you can do. There was an old fellow called, I think George Gordienko, is one of the most fantastic wrestlers this job has ever seen.
Right.
And he said the best weapon you can ever have in your armoury is fitness.
Yes. And
that always stuck with me through the years. Also, Steve Vidor said to me when I first started, because Steve was one of my big heroes, Steve Vidor. And he said to me, never shirk your training, Mal, because there's only one person you're cheating, and that's yourself. And that stuck with me. You know, things stick with you.
Yes.
And that stuck with me, and it stuck with me to today. You know, and Flatliner said to me, when they bury you, Mal, they have to put dumbbells in the box. But that, you know, Flatliner, and he's the same. You know, he's the same. And yeah, it's either built in you or it's not, Josh. I think you'll be run like that. I think you'll be a trainer all your life.
That's the thing. It's become such a part of the daily routine now that it's the anchor to the day. It sort of keeps the day together.
Of course, a great inspiration to us all is Jimmy Fitzmaurice. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jimmy Fitzmaurice. He was in the business.
I've heard the name.
Jim's still doing marathons now, and I think he's 78.
Wow.
And he's still doing the marathons and still doing this yoga stuff. 78. He's always been in great shape. Jim used to do the bed and nails trick. You remember that?
I do, yeah.
He used to come in with a bed and nails, and he was the first one to do that. And they used to put a slab on his chest, and they'd smash it with a sledgehammer. And all that. Yeah, but just as a sort of a flash, you know, to start the match off, you know, to give him this. But he was a strong man, Jim. I met up with him a few months ago, actually, before this happened. And still a lovely, down-to-earth fellow, and still training at 78, an inspiration to everybody.
No, absolutely. Now, moving on to your final years in the job, Mal, you appeared for the promoters that target their shows at the internet audience. And how did you feel doing those type of shows as opposed to wrestling in front of the more family audiences?
Well, you have to change with the times or get left behind, don't you? And it wasn't really my scene, really, but you know, I wanted to try and do 40 years in the job if I could. So you have to adapt to what's happening at the time. And obviously I prefer the old days. As I say, the old days were the greatest for me. And the people, you know, the characters and stuff. So, but it's like everything, Josh, you know, you have to adapt to what's happening. And I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as, you know, working to the great audiences that we had the pleasure of working to over the years.
You're still doing training seminars, Mal. I know you came along to what was John Ritchie's training school, the Dropkicks Academy, about 4 years ago to do a seminar, which was greatly received.
We do them occasionally, me and Steve. We don't. I like to do them with Steve because we sort of bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Normally, and we still do them now and again. Obviously, not at this moment with the crisis that's in place, but we do them for Andy Simmons. Andy Simmons has got a wrestling school.
Yes, in Portsmouth.
And we do them quite regular for Andy, and I enjoy it. I mean, it's only we do 3 hours every 3 months or something. It's nothing, but it's just nice to put a little bit back in, and hope that you can sort of get one thing or two things over to people in that time that will better their performance or will sort of make sense to them. And as I said to you before, we try kind of ram into their brains that you've got to be able to ad lib, you've got to be able to sell, and not everything needs to be done at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Things like that, the old school. And hopefully they take some notice,
So there may be those listening now that haven't been able to get along to a seminar. So if you had to pass on a bit of advice to the wrestlers today, what would it be?
It would be listen to what the trainers are telling you. Don't try and run before you can walk. Like as you said before, lots of people are more interested in doing somersaults off the corners than they are in linking up. I see some people linking up, and it's like 2 bags of crisps floating out of the air, touching each other. And it's got to be, you've got to, although everybody has this, opinion that wrestling is all a show now, we're still of the old school where, all right, it may be a show, but let's keep it, tight, and let's keep it looking half real.
Absolutely.
And you know that as well, because that's the way you were brought up, I know.
Yes.
And, it's enough of a Strictly Come Dancing show when they do the, it reminds me of like a sequence they do in Come Dancing. So just try and keep it tight, sell, and don't try and do too much at once. Everybody tries, as you said, they try to cram 6 rounds into 5 minutes, and people can't see what's happening. It's all a blur, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like one of those cartoons when Tom and Jerry are fighting and there's all stars and stuff coming out. People don't see what you're doing. They can't react to it, can they? The crowd can't see what you're doing. So, yeah. Just listen to as I said to you before, some of the trainers that are training people, be training themselves, in my opinion. I won't mention any names. I was very lucky. I had the great honour of having great trainers and people that advised me that were fantastic, wrestlers and stuff. So.
In closing, Mal, we'll wrap this up here. You're a very funny man, and I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you today, but you're one of the funniest I've been lucky enough to share a changing room with. And a few years back, you told a story on stage at William Regal's one-man show, and I wasn't there. I've seen the pictures, but I always wanted to know what that story was.
Yeah, there's a bit of swearing in it, so I don't know if I'll be able to say it.
Oh, absolutely. It was
I was just saying about the characters in the game, and there was an MC called Frankie Blake. As I said to you before, I said everybody was a character.
Yes.
Even down to the people that put the rings up. Everybody was a character.
Yeah.
And Frankie Blake was a larger-than-life character that lived in Soho. And Frank had been around the business for years. And he, in the summer, I think he had a house in Weymouth, so he would do all the Weymouth shows. He would be there for the summer season because Weymouth ran all summer, every week.
Yeah.
And the first time I was there, I was in a car with Sid Cooper, Steve Logan, who was a big star, and Max Ward,
referee.
And they all went in the changing room, and Frank was in there. And as he went in, he went, "Oh, hello, Max." He went, "Hello, Steve. Hello, Sid." And when I come in, he went, "Who's this prick?" But just funny at the time, you had to be there. But he didn't mean anything by it, but that's just the way it was, and he actually used a stronger word than that. I've calmed it down a bit for it. But just fantastic characters, Josh, and you would have loved it because you like being around a bit of burlesque and all that.
Absolutely.
A bit of laughter. And they don't do it now.
No.
Someone said to me the other day, Matt, we need you back in the change rooms. They're like a chapel of rest now when you go in there. No one's laughing. No one's doing anything. They're all like solemn, sitting there at work. That wasn't like it when we were there.
No.
In fact, it used to spoil our night sometimes, having to put our boots on to wrestle.
Yeah.
Because we were having so much fun in the changing rooms and talking and mucking around that it was a nuisance to put our boots on, Josh, and go and wrestle. So
wow.
that just shows you the great times that we had. So
definitely.
And it's been lovely speaking to you.
No, thank you very much for taking the time, Mal. I really appreciate it.
Steve Regal, have you seen those one-man shows?
I've not seen them, no. I've seen the pictures.
If you get a chance to go and see him because he's funny, Regal. And he'll tell you all about the old... I mean, he came into business after me. You know, he came in probably 10 years after me.
Yeah.
But it's a good show and it's a good story. Yeah, he had me up on the stage. It was a good night, that. It's a good night. He's a good fella.
Yes.
Regal. He's a good fella, Regal. And,
absolutely. No, Mel...
So we can go and see him when it all comes back to...
Definitely.
And all this.
Definitely. Mal, thank you very much for taking the time to chat.
Pleasure.
Everyone's going to have a great time listening to your stories.
Good. And nice to speak to you. And keep doing your stuff, you know.
Yes.
Which way you want to go. You choose which way you want to go, or you can do both if you can. But
absolutely.
If you find you're being drawn to one more than the other, put a few more of your stand-ups on Facebook. Because you used to put a few on there, but I haven't seen any.
I will, Mel. I'll do that for you, if anything.
Yeah.
Alrighty. A huge thanks once again to Mal Sanders for taking the time to come and talk about his 40-year career in the world of professional wrestling. What a chat. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll be back next week, where doing the rounds will be none other than Mr. Smooth, Johnny Kidd. So until then, I've been Josh Faulkner. Goodbye.